Napoleon Bonaparte, 1769 to 1821, the emperor who conquered the world and was destroyed by his own dream. A warm summer breeze drifted across the small mountain town of Ajaccio on the rugged island of Corsica. On August 15, 1769, the world welcomed a baby boy born into a modest, minor noble family, Napoleon Bonaparte. The island had only recently been ceded to France, and his father, Carlo Buonaparte, an ambitious lawyer, quickly pledged allegiance to the new rulers, hoping to secure his family's future. His mother, Letizia Ramolino, was known for her strength, discipline, and unyielding spirit, a woman who refused to bow to hardship. Letizia gave birth to Napoleon amidst war and uncertainty, yet she raised him with an iron hand. She believed that suffering was life's greatest teacher. While other children were coddled, Napoleon learned toughness. He was taught that the world has no mercy for the weak. From his mother, he inherited resilience and determination, two traits that would one day make him a giant on the battlefield. Napoleon was the second of 8 children. The Bonapartes lived modestly in a stone house in Ajaccio. His father was often away, entangled in legal and political affairs, while his mother ran the household with near military discipline. In that home, young Napoleon grew up quiet, intense, and deeply thoughtful, a boy with a fire smoldering inside. At night, he sat by the window, reading stories of Alexander the Great, Hannibal, and Julius Caesar, his eyes glowing with fascination. He imagined himself commanding great armies, orchestrating battles, and conquering faraway lands. He didn't yet know that one day those dreams would come true, and that the same dreams would also consume him. Education and the birth of a soldier. At 9 years old, Napoleon was sent to Brienne-le-Château Military Academy in mainland France. For a boy from a remote island, it felt like exile. At Brienne, he faced bitter reality. He was mocked for his Corsican accent, sneered at for his provincial manners, and dismissed as socially inferior by the French aristocrats. But humiliation forged him instead of breaking him. He withdrew from social circles and buried himself in study, mathematics, geography, and the art of war. He realized that true power didn't come from noble blood, but from intellect and relentless will. While other boys played mock sword fights, Napoleon sketched battle formations in the sand, arranging pebbles and sticks into regiments and commanding them with fierce precision. One of his instructors once said, "That boy will become something extraordinary or something dangerous." At 15, Napoleon was admitted to École Militaire in Paris, France's top military academy. There, he studied modern artillery, logistics, and the strategies of great generals. He learned one crucial lesson. War wasn't merely about strength, it was about calculation. He completed 3 years of coursework in just 2, an exceptional feat even by French standards. In 1785, at only 16, he graduated as a second lieutenant of artillery. But his triumph was shadowed by tragedy, his father's death soon after. From then on, Napoleon became the head of the family. In silence, he vowed, "One day, the name Bonaparte will echo across the world." The Revolution and the rise of a commander. 4 years later, the world turned upside down. The French Revolution of 1789 shattered the old order. The king was executed, nobles fled, and senior officers lost their commands. In this chaos, space opened for talented young men like Napoleon. He quickly earned a reputation for his sharp mind and tactical brilliance. His moment of destiny arrived during the Siege of Toulon, 1973, when Royalists and British forces seized the vital southern port. As a young captain, Napoleon devised a daring artillery plan. He moved his cannons into unexpected positions, bombarded the British fleet from the land, and stormed enemy fortifications in a single night. Toulon fell. France was saved. and Napoleon Bonaparte's name began to rise. At just 24, he was promoted to brigadier general. But fortune is fickle. He was later imprisoned briefly, accused of political ties, and nearly forgotten. Then, when France once again needed a savior, the government called upon him. The Italian campaign, 1796 to 1797. The making of a legend. In 1796, at age 26, Napoleon was given command of the army of Italy. His troops were starving, poorly clothed, and demoralized. Yet before them stood a commander whose voice carried fire. "Soldiers, you are hungry and naked, yet the government owes you everything, honor, glory, and reward. I will lead you to the most fertile lands on earth. There you will find both victory and fortune worthy of your courage." Those words lit a spark that ignited an empire. Within months, Napoleon swept across northern Italy, defeating Austria's armies in battle after battle, Montenotte, Lodi, Arcole. At Lodi, he personally led the charge across a narrow bridge under a storm of bullets, waving the French flag high and shouting, "Follow me, victory or death." His bravery became legend. His soldiers adored him not because of his title, but because he fought beside them, shoulder to shoulder. Italy fell. Austria sued for peace. And the world began to whisper one name with awe: Napoleon Bonaparte. Egypt, 1798 to 1799. The dream of empire. After Italy, Napoleon turned his gaze eastward. He dreamed of striking at British trade routes to India by conquering Egypt. But this campaign was more than war. It was a mission of civilization. He brought over 150 scientists, engineers, and scholars with him, believing conquest should carry the torch of knowledge. Before the Battle of the Pyramids, he addressed his men. "Soldiers, from the top of these pyramids, 40 centuries of history look down upon you." The French triumphed, but glory soon crumbled. Admiral Horatio Nelson destroyed the French fleet in the Battle of the Nile, leaving Napoleon stranded. Yet even cut off from France, he returned home not as a defeated man, but as a hero, the savior of the Republic. From consul to emperor. By 1799, France was in chaos once again. The Directory had failed. The economy was in ruins. The people longed for a strong leader. Napoleon returned, overthrew the government in the coup of 18 Brumaire, and declared himself first consul. 5 years later, on December 2, 1804, beneath the soaring arches of Notre Dame Cathedral, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of the French. He took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head, a gesture seen across the world as a statement of destiny. He would bow to no one. The height of glory. Austerlitz, 1805. On a misty morning near the town of Austerlitz in Moravia, Napoleon faced the combined armies of Russia and Austria. Pretending weakness, he lured them into a trap. As the sun pierced the fog, the sun of Austerlitz, his men called it, Napoleon unleashed his counterattack. The enemy lines shattered. Thousands lay dead or fled. It was his masterpiece. "This," he said, "is the finest day of my life." The Battle of Austerlitz cemented his reputation as one of the greatest military geniuses in history. The fall begins. The Russian campaign. 1812. After conquering nearly all of Europe, Napoleon set his sights on Russia. He marched with the Grande Armée, over 600,000 soldiers from 20 nations. But Tsar Alexander I refused to meet him in open battle, using the scorched earth strategy instead, burning crops and villages, leaving nothing for the invaders. When Napoleon reached Moscow, the city was ablaze. There was no victory to claim. Then came the brutal Russian winter. Snow fell endlessly. Men starved, froze, and died by the thousands. Out of 600,000 soldiers, Barely 100,000 made it back. Napoleon rode silently among the corpses of his army, his eyes fixed on the gray sky. The ambition that had carried him to the peak of power now dragged him toward ruin. Defeat, exile, and the 100 Days. In 1813, he was defeated at Leipzig. The next year, Paris fell. Napoleon abdicated and was exiled to the tiny island of Elba. Greater than, "They can take my throne," he said, "but never my dreams." In February 1815, he escaped, landing on the French coast. As government troops approached, he walked toward them, opened his coat and shouted, "If you would shoot your emperor, here I am!" No one fired. The soldiers cheered. Napoleon returned to Paris and to power for what history calls the 100 Days. Waterloo, 1815. The final sunset, June 18, 1815. The sky over Belgium was gray and heavy with rain. The fields were a swamp of mud. Napoleon faced the combined forces of Wellington and Blücher. The battle raged all day. For a brief moment it seemed France might triumph again, but the Prussian reinforcements arrived and sealed his fate. As the sun set, thousands of French soldiers lay dead. Napoleon's empire was no more. St. Helena, the twilight of the emperor. The British exiled him far away to the lonely island of St. Helena, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. There were no armies there, no glory, only cliffs, wind, and endless sea. In isolation, he wrote, reflected and relived his memories. Sometimes he would stand by the cliffs, staring at the horizon, whispering to himself, "I conquered the world, but I could not conquer myself." On May 5, 1821, Napoleon Bonaparte died at the age of 51. The skies over St. Helena darkened, and the waves crashed softly, as if the world itself mourned the fallen emperor who had once reshaped it. Enduring legacy. Napoleon left behind more than battlefields and empires. He gave the world the Napoleonic Code, the foundation of modern law in many nations. He championed merit over birthright, believing that greatness should be earned, not inherited. But perhaps his greatest lesson was not about power, it was about ambition. Unbounded ambition can build an empire, but it can also destroy the soul that built it. From a poor boy on a remote island, to the emperor who ruled nearly all of Europe, to a lonely exile on a forgotten rock, Napoleon Bonaparte's story remains one of the most powerful epics of human history, a tale of glory, downfall, and an unbroken will.